Automation.
Hello, Mr. Butler. Thank you so very much. We're going to see if we can deal with these challenges we're having and get this show started. I'm so very sorry.
So let me let you know I'm getting an extreme echo effect. Yeah, I'm getting an extreme echo effect. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm getting a real heavy reverb or echo effect.
Yeah, we have some communication issues tonight over at our location. They're working on the Wi-Fi. They told us they had it worked out, but we're having some trouble. So we're going to edit this part out, but we're going to do the show. Can you hear us?
I can hear you well now. Yes.
Okay, great. Then what we'll do is we will switch to a view that gives us you, and then we'll get the show started. Palms up to you, Mr. Butler, and to our Facebook family out there. We are like the phoenix. We keep rising no matter what they give to us. Welcome, Mr. Butler. And thank you so very much for joining the Palms Up Show. While we continue in the background to try to work the kinks out, we're going to go ahead and get this started because you have some wonderful things to share. We want to hear your message. We want to thank you first and foremost for coming out to celebrate and represent during your campaign the issue and the ongoing plights of the families at Woodbury. And as you promised us that you would continue to help fight for the challenges that many DC residents are having. And just before we voted, we saw that the folks over on Morris Road in Southeast Ward 8 had some of the similar issues. So I thought it would be only fair, and I thank you for agreeing to do this long before you knew what the outcome of the results would be. So I thank you for agreeing to come forward and to be transparent, be accountable, and to help us and help our citizens understand, because maybe they're not happy with the results, and maybe we all have some unresolved conversating to do. So we wanted to give you a fair opportunity on the Palms Up platform to come by and help us understand where James Butler is now, and then help us to understand what the road forward looks like for you. And thank you again, James.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hamilton. I really appreciate you and the work that you do. And Reverend, it's also always good to see you as well. You all, I consider my foot soldiers, and I am so grateful for folks like you all that are out there. Let's also me thank my mother's keeper and all the mental intelligence advocates that work with you, those throughout the country and the world. There's a great need. But also, let me not forget the viewers, those that are viewing live and those that will view later on. Thank you all for giving me some of your time. As was mentioned by Dr. Hamilton, I am James Butler, and I just finished a run for mayor of the District of Columbia in the primary. We ran it through. I am a person that has been deeply concerned by the injustices and inequities and disparities in this city. That is who I am from the core of who I am. And that is who I will remain, whether I'm in the mayor's seat or some other seat. The reality is I'm going to keep on fighting for those that need it most. I always say a great leader will lead with his or her mind, but equally with their heart. And that's what I will and want to continue to do in the district as I remain reflective and rather I will wade in the political waters again. And if I do, when that will be and in what capacity that will be, I think it requires me to be reflected in the days, weeks, months, and maybe even years for what my future may hold in DC politics. At the same time, what I am confident that I will do is remain an advocate and a watchdog for people that need it most. There are a lot of people that are hurting in this city, as Dr. Hamilton indicated, at Woodbury, at 1300 Morris Road, at Marbury Plaza. And I know the list goes on throughout the city because people have contacted me all over where there are huge, huge housing disparities, inequities of even policing our city, food shortages in the city, not only for our unhoused population, but for those that are housed. We've got some real serious issues in this city. And it does disappoint me a little bit that we're left with some of the same leadership. But I regard democracy. I respect democracy. The will of the voters will be carried out. And we must remain vigilant in the days ahead.
You said nothing but the truth, and I thank you for working with us. But you know how it is when you go to do such a wonderful show as this, and then the technology gods show up. But we're going to press through, and I thank you for being the fighter that you are. You touched on a couple of things. You touched on the fact that we do still, which is really sad, that we still need advocates on the ground, paying attention and pointing out the issues that still will remain for many that may be frustrated. This is a threat of a 3-time term mayor that many in the city are frustrated with. What we saw, Mr. Butler, was that the turnout percentage was a little over 30%, if I'm accurate. I know they're still counting the missing the absentee ballots and things, and those that were in the lock boxes. But what comes to mind when you hear that? Because this is now, if I'm not mistaken, a second run for you for the mayor's seat. What was different this time from last time as it relates to the voter turnout, in your opinion?
So the good part is it got better. 2018, of all registered Democrats, we have about 300 and close to 400,000 registered Democrats in the district. In 2018, ironically, the turnout percentage was 18%. In this election, this 2022 primary, every DC voter was a Democrat and Republican, and all the other parties were mailed a ballot to their home for the first time ever in a mayor's race. And it did increase the turnout. In fact, it almost doubled it. Right now, we're at 31%. And of course, as you accurately indicated, the ballots are still being counted. So that number could go up to probably 32, 33, 34%. So it's better, but still, folks, nowhere where we need to be. We're not there until we get at 100%. Everyone who has the ability to vote should be participating in the process. And, people say, I've got a right not to vote. Well, you do. And you should have a right not to complain when things aren't the way you want it.
That is so true. And, we all know that the definition of insanity is playing out here. Basically, we want different results, but we're not doing what we need to do to produce that. And so one of the reasons why I thought it'd be a great idea to have you on the platform is because I feel like we don't get started until after the results, right? We don't start circling the wagons and figuring out what could we have done differently or what have you. The road forward, you mentioned that possibly, you'll be in there and you'll let us know and keep us posted. Does that mean that this general election is probably something that you have chosen to opt out of, or are you still weighing that?
Well, anything's possible if the way we would have to do it. So in DC, if you run a primary all the way through, if you run any primary all the way through, you can't go in as an independent or a Republican or some other party. You must do it as a write-in. One thing I know that write-in, having done one, write-in candidacies are somewhat of an uphill battle because, one, it requires literally every voter to, as the name indicates, write your name in, your full name. And so it's worked one time, I think, in modern DC history, and that was when Anthony Williams was kicked off the ballot, I think in 2002, because of signature irregularities. He then formed the write-in candidacy in the general election, and ultimately he was elected. Now that was with He was already an incumbent. He had already done his 4 years. He was well funded. So he had some things going in his favor. I will say this, I try to have a malleable mind and open mind, fluidity with regards to change in this world. So I try to leave all possibilities on the table and keep my spiritual antenna up at the same time. So while I won't say a yay or nay, I will say in a world of possibilities, anything's possible.
Well, that's a long way to say that you're still contemplating it. And that's fair. And I appreciate you and even tackling these tough questions, because it can't be fun having to go through this, but I appreciate your spirit, your tenacity, and your commitment to our city. As we grow forward, as you were touching on, a lot of people don't realize that we have a primary and we have a general. So a lot of folks, because this is a predominantly Democratic town, are under the impression that because she's won this first round, that it's done, right? So I think that because we still have people not understanding the process, we are very much lacking the proper education. For me as an advocate on the ground, and I'm very committed, it kind of, when we are telling them to put the guns down, but then we find out, east of the river where we have a lot of it, that the community centers weren't funded to even be a proper resource or a solution in that. And so now we're saying you got to come vote, but we're not giving them viable choices they feel to vote, or maybe we're not putting folks before them earlier so that they don't find themselves just taking themselves out of the process. What recommendations, now having run 2 campaigns in our city and talking with our folks and knowing that there's still a great need out here, even though you and others like you were not successful in trying to bring or usher in a different form of leadership. What recommendations would you make to us as community leaders and then to the community viewers so that we can be more informed about the candidates ahead of time? We've got to get people motivated and galvanized even when they don't feel like they have a choice in the race. That's the issue. But how would you recommend we go about doing that?
Well, I really do believe that there's something critically important that a lot of us aren't understanding that's happened right now. There's a lot of voter suppression right now, and that voter suppression comes in many forms. When sometimes it comes in the form of you've got one candidate that is buried, where the media doesn't cover him or her. Another time it happens when certain communities aren't even informed that there's a primary coming up. There's not, and that is the Board of Election is not doing enough public outreach. I really think the voters and the people, the viewers really need to understand. We hold the keys to our democracy, and it's delicately balanced in our hands. Now, if we choose to, and I said this eerily, a prediction, and I hope it doesn't come true, that I think that our country is at risk of losing its democracy within the next 5 to 10 years. I say that only because I see so much voter suppression. I see unfairness coming from both sides of the aisle in this city and in the nation at large. And democracy is literally predicated on fundamental ideas of fairness and honoring a system that works and has worked. But if we cheat the system, or we doubt the system, or we try to suppress candidates, or we try to hide information from voters, I think we'll lose that. And in this city, I think the best thing that we can get are voters speaking up about the lack of access to information, or not only when primaries are coming up, we should start notifying voters well ahead of primaries coming up. I mean, we've got systems, if there's an Amber Alert, we can go to everyone's cell phone and text them there. No way am I suggesting we should, abuse that ability to access people's phones, but I'm just showing you how broad access to people are these days. If you want to get information to people, you can do it. We have the ability to get on TVs and tell them a primaries coming up. These many people are voting in. But if people don't speak out against the lack of information and feel the importance of information in who they elect, we're going to constantly lose out. And unfortunately, these are primarily marginalized communities of colors that are missing out. Predominantly affluent white communities are coming out and they're participating in the process. And quite frankly, now I feel they're writing the narrative that if the process works, they're choosing who gets in office or not. And this is something I'm saying as a warning to people of color all across the district and all across the country. If you will watch this, if you don't participate in the process, you're allowing someone to speak for you. Participating in the process is your voice. If you don't let your voice be heard, someone will speak up and over you about something that affects you.
That is wonderful. You said that really well. Yeah, think about that. Now I want to touch on something. I want to go to a very uncomfortable place. Will you allow me to go there with you? I promise
Absolutely.
you it'll be fair. I just feel like that if we're not able to have the hard conversations in our communities and before our community members, then we won't get them to understand the importance of this. What's really concerning for me is that as we, the District of Columbia, and we're the nation's capital, we should be the example, but obviously we're not without our flaws and we've got to figure this out, right? And the reality is that we're dealing with big business here, big corporation, development, there's a lot going on and it seems like the issues of the people are behind. But then we talk about DC being the chocolate city, right? We heard that for so long, we own that, right? And Mayor for Life and all of the other wonderful monikers that kept us motivated, right? But I seem to feel like my own personal opinion is that somewhere in this conversation, we're not realizing that chocolate city moniker is no more, that gap has been narrowed. I've read it in several different contexts, depending on whose statistics you're looking at, right? But I've seen something dangerously close, as though there was 1% that divided us, depending on, how they calculated that. Meaning, did they include the Latin Americans in with the Caucasians, or, the reality of it? But the truth of the matter is, what we do know, and we can all agree on, is that the numbers have changed. And when you talk about people speaking up and taking advantage of the process and receiving resources and things of that nature, one of the things that concerns me is the reality. I'm sorry, this technology is beating us up today, Mr. Butler. But the truth of the matter is,
we're going to blame it on Dr. Foles.
Hey, I got tough, heavy shoulders, so go ahead and do it.
I know you do.
I'm going to try to do this on air and eliminate. Hold on. I tell you.
Technology, darling.
I'm really enjoying our conversation. I don't know why. There we go. All right.
So let's do this.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you very much for your kindness, your patience, and you are a trooper, so the show goes on. So with that said, one of the things that I wanted to understand was, I wanted to understand that with the gap closing and with the populations changing in the city, we're getting dangerously close to this being a black-white thing, right? And I'm concerned for our children, because the narrative with our police department relationship, right? Our children are inheriting these processes or these narratives that are putting us in situations where it's us against them, right? With the climate of the city changing so much, where is the medium so that because Aaron Palmer, this is where I'm going with this. Aaron Palmer waged a very aggressive and very impressive competition against Phil Mickelson, right? Coming out of nowhere, having not run before, what have you. And I think it had a lot to do with, I guess, being able to understand that there are issues in this town that are not just black and white. And if the numbers in the populations, because they've changed so much, we've got to give our people another reason to be involved other than just reducing it to a black, white, us, them, right? So when we talk about educating our people to come out for the issues, maybe we've got to go even deeper and get them to do something for maybe the children per se, or some of the other things that they care about, other than us assuming that they'll show up because we tell them, obviously that if you're a person of color, if you don't get involved, it's going to leave you. And that's true, no doubt. But we've been saying that to them the whole time. We said that the last race, right? So they're obviously needing something else. And how do you accredit Erin Palmer coming out and having her message resonate? And then on your side of the fence, Robert White did well, but then when we look at your campaign not getting as much, is it a situation that if more voters had come out that you feel you would have had a better chance? Or should we be galvanizing around the true message so that we can truly educate the people about what it is? Because just telling them that it's a us against them, or black or white, doesn't seem like that's moving them. And it seems pretty accurate.
Well, my feeling is that Palmer may have done well because of white progressives. Let's just say what it is. There's systemic racism that still operates in this country. And if you're a white woman, or a white man, maybe sometimes, people feel that, hey, well, let's give this person a chance. I wonder how that would have been had it been a black woman against Phil Mendelssohn. Now, this is stuff that people wouldn't like to talk about, but I don't know. I mean, you had a white man and a white woman. So maybe it was, we're not going to lose a seat to another black person on DC Council. So it's okay if we try this progressive white woman. I really can't say. I don't know Erin that well. I've only met her a couple of times. I heard her message was very progressive. And I will say this, there are a lot of white progressives in population growing in the city. We're probably second to San Francisco in the number of white progressives. And Robert had a very progressive message. Erin Palmer had a progressive message. Carl Racine is the kingmaker behind the progressives in this city. He won't endorse anyone unless they are progressive. I'm a very moderate person. I'm a tough on crime person. I believe that it hurt me with my public safety, the more police officers, the tough on crime message that I had. And then I'm not part of the establishment. So you got the number of progressives growing in the city. I think we're second to San Francisco right now. It's funny, my brother was handing a lady who was, let's call her a white lady, one of my cards at the election poll. And I was away, and he says, my brother who's a minister, he's an amazing brother, he is. And so he's with me on the ground, and he says, I was giving a lady one of your cards, and I said, he's tough on the crime. She said, that's the problem. He's too tough on crime, And so, I know amongst white progressives, sometimes I think some of the past inequities of Black men being disproportionately incarcerated, they want to feel that they're on the right side of history. But I'm more concerned than they are, and I'll tell you why. I'm a Black man, and I know in this city, when there's a bullet that flies, there's a Black victim on the other end of it. So I'm not getting caught up in this foolishness of, we can't incarcerate Black men and this and that. Yeah, I want to approach the root of the problem, but at the same time, I want to make sure people are adequately punished when a Black victim dies.
That makes sense.
And that's really stuff. They can get into political ideology, run out and get their Black Lives Matter signs, stake them in their front yards, and
or
feel
paint
good
it on
about
the road.
Yeah, and feel good about talking at parties how, I'm progressive because I think the number of Black men that's incarcerated, well, so do I. I think it's unfair too, but I didn't make those laws. I wasn't in Congress when they were made. At the same time, I know if you're weak on crime, you're going to have people believing that other Black people believing that they can kill, to kill a 6-year-old Black girl and 10-year-old through errant bullets, that stuff bothers me from the core of who I am. I'm not going to call it black on black crime because there's white on white crime, Latino on Latino crime. But at the same time, I know, I believe we have pivoted too far to the left on our policies regarding crime. And I probably was one of the more bold ones talking about where I think we need to be as a city. And I think it bothered a lot of people. Bowser was equally moderate, probably. But the thing is, she's got the name recognition, the base, all the people connected to the contracts. They're going to vote their interests, their money interests. And I think, you know, me being the new guy on the block, so to speak, without holding a public office, being that tough on crime in a very progressive city, I think in 2 years from now, they're going to be wishing they had James Butler for mayor. I honestly believe that.
That's
They'll
awesome.
be wishing they had a tough on crime guy out there that's really actually cares about people, cares about marginalized population from a housing standpoint, from an unhoused standpoint. I think the city's going to be begging for that. I think you're going to see crime get worse. I think we're going to be at a 30 to 40 year high. I really do believe that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair and that's real. I guess folks watching and folks that did vote for you are wanting to understand, you know, looking at it now. And I guess what I hear you saying is that DC has become more progressive. And you certainly knew that going into the race. You certainly knew that she had the momentum, or that she had the name and had the base, and that they would most likely vote with her. What was your strategy beyond what you've already spoke on, and where do you think, again, we could have been different, could have done something different, or you could have done something different?
My strategy was to let them know that I was the viable alternative to Muriel Bowser. Did it work? Clearly not. I believe I probably had too much confidence in the average voter feeling the pain of a city that where every single metric basically has not been good. The crime is at a 20-year high. If you looked at that, I think we're at 110 homicides already. We're just in June. I think if you look at deeply affordable housing, there's none of that. I think of 20,000 people waiting on the housing list, you have seen maybe 10 of those granted over the last little bit. There are numbers that really are unacceptable for the nation's capital of America. But, you know, there's a certain demographic of wealth in this city that I don't think people even recognize. There is an incredible amount of wealth in the District of Columbia. And I think wealthy people don't feel the pain and maybe aren't feeling the pain quite yet. But what I do believe, when you start, the only thing that's going to sway the wealth vote in the city is when they really, really feel unsafe. I think they're feeling safe, but I don't think they really feel like their hides are on the line. You let that happen and this stuff start festering in the neighborhoods, I see it slowly moving in that direction. I think you're going to see a very strong revolt against Mayor Bowser and some of her policies of just being a placeholder. I think they're going to want her to begin doing the hard stuff that I talked about through all the campaign. I can't tell you the amount of people that, even some that didn't vote for me, some of Robert's camp that have said, you really, really, really talked about the hard stuff. You talked about the hard stuff that no one was willing to talk about. And, you know, you really did move me. And one of the candidates, I'm not going to name his name, but he came up to me and he says, Mr. Butler, you made me better. You were tough on me, but you made me better. And I believe that. I believe that. You know, name recognition is a hard thing to overcome. You have one council member, even if it's bad, even if your name is associated with something bad, if you got a bowling pulpit, they're still in the media and they're talking about you. So me being the outlier and, you know, not holding a public office or not having a bowling pulpit, that hurt me in that regard. It hurt me with some of the progressives. And, you know, if I had to do it all over again, and the date was, knowing what I know, and the date was June 24th, 2021, which is when I declared last year, I would do it all over again. as God stands as my witness, I would do all over again. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes you don't win, but you win, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, oh, most definitely.
Change.
Most
Yes,
definitely. Most definitely.
You bring issues to the forefront. You change policy. You cause your opponents to pivot. You do a whole lot of things by running. And I would encourage anyone that has the passion and the intellect to run. I do say intellect because I don't just think any old one just ought to be running. I think you ought to have some good ideas. I think you ought to have some passion. And I think, you should run. So that's what I had, that confidence that voters would be a little more pragmatic, I guess. I think that people could have been more engaged. When people are like, I'm behind you. Well, look, if you don't have the money to give, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
I do have the D&D on my phone. I don't know why it's not.
So you preaching to the choir. We had 8 devices in here.
Mary, Mother of God. I promise you, my D&D is on. But Dr. Hamilton, I sometimes casually refer to you as Rhonda. I've known you so long.
So long.
But you're just the work you do. Honestly, my hat is off to you. I get a bit tangential on this. I don't know how you have the patience and the fortitude, and Dr. Coles, you too, just to be in the trenches. I applaud you, ladies. But you all know this, and probably my sentiments will resound with you. As I tell people, you can tell someone you're behind them, and you don't even have to have money. But I guarantee you, if you don't have money, you have time. And I guarantee you, if you do have the money and you can give them some money, you might not have the time. Sometimes people have both. But look, with all 3 of those, money and time or just money, you at least have one of those. And if you ain't...
I hear you. So
see, y'all gotta stop making me laugh.
If you
ain't putting up one of those, you ain't doing your job.
That's right.
If you're not doing one of them, you're not doing your job.
That's
so
right.
You can tell me you're supporting me, but show me you're supporting me.
That's right. Well, you know something, I want to touch on something. I'm glad you said that. And I think that that's growth on your behalf, because I've had the pleasure and the fortitude to be able to observe you in your first run, right?
You did. Very closely. Yeah.
and you know,
Dr.
being
Hamilton,
a local,
maybe too closely in the first one.
God knew, God had a plan, and if we never know where He's going to send it from, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think about how kind you are, how willing to give the benefit of the doubt. With those of us that come from the city, we've seen it day in and day out, especially when it comes to the politics of it all. We're a little tired, we're a little weary, we're a little sick, we're not buying it, you got a hidden agenda, something's not right. And one thing I can say about you is that you are determined, right? And you and I have had this conversation in the background, that if being the mayor is your destiny, then you owe no one any explanations. You just go out and you get it done, right? And so
I'm either determined or crazy, one or the other.
Well, I don't know. I left that one alone, because when you decided you're gonna run for the nation's capital, man, with all this, and we seen some of your live feeds, so you ain't had it easy, brother. You've been indoctrinated into this beautiful town about it, sure. But you jumped in the race. I wanted to touch on that. You're so kind. I saw that you wrote an op-ed your last term, and you talked about ending, or eradicating is the word I want to use. You talked about helping to eradicate homelessness.
Yeah.
Talk to me about where you are now, because obviously, is that not something we can still accomplish or set out to accomplish, even if you're not in that mayoral seat? And what does that look like, and how do we proceed forward with that? Because there's not a person, whether they voted or not, progressive or not, that wouldn't agree that we've got to do something about this homelessness problem in our town. And she doesn't have the answer. And that's why you guys are running, no doubt. One of the reasons.
Right. Dr. Hendleton, that's a great question. And yes, so I always say this, if you are a person that cares, whether you're in that office or out, as I said at the beginning too, you're going to still care. And I've been to every single shelter in DC to just talk about some of the conditions of our own house. and a lot of tent encampments around the city. And it's always the same thing when I talk with people who are unhoused. Some talk about that they'd rather be unhoused because the transitional housing and the shelters are so deplorable. From the beatings to the rapes, to the fights, to the belongings being stolen, to the bed bugs, to all of these sorts of things. So I've been pushing, and I will say this, the op-ed that you read was old. I think it was written in 2017 or 2018. I've evolved quite since that time.
Yeah, it shows your passion, and that's what I was touching on.
Yeah, and so one thing that I've learned and know that the city can do, we have our own housing stock where we can build that out to provide long-term supportive housing. But what's been happening with that city housing stock, we've literally been taking some of that, and you've heard about it, and selling it to private developers for $1 here or $1 there. That defies humanity, that we're not looking out for the least of these amongst us. And you know what, my brother who was on the ground with me that is a minister, and he was like, some of the stuff we're talking about is just so subversive to the ideas of Christianity and the will of God, that maybe, these people are there that let me not get too much into the theology.
No, go ahead. This is your hour, sir. No, you go ahead.
I call it really trickery is what I look at it as.
It really is. They are really not fulfilling the will of God. They talk about being Christians or Catholics or whatever. They're not doing anything. Everything is subversive to the will of God that they're doing as leaders. The leaders would look out for the least of these amongst us. And so that's really what I believe we need to start doing, is a carve out, doing the hard stuff as they talk about in democracy. And you could sit a baby in the mayor's office almost, and with all the systems around, it would actually work. I mean, honestly.
Not if that baby had to depend on those systems, because those Woodbury citizens can't depend on those systems, Mr. Butler.
Because the systems are failing them that we have right now. A baby could probably do a better job. I could go and cut a ribbon and grip and grin in front of a camera. That's easy stuff, but
you're right. I hear you. No, we laughing. We hear you. We're with you. And that's right. But the reality is that, as you said, it's not just enough to say it. We got to make it happen. So now, sitting in the seat where you're sitting, what is it going to take to upseat this mayor, in your opinion?
Wow. It's going to take voters that are sick and tired of being sick and tired. I really believe that. I don't think it's hurt the average voter in DC enough. I think you have a lot of white affluence in DC that hasn't been hurt. Their biggest problems is, oh man, they ain't giving us statehood yet. And that's a big problem in DC. I'm with you there. I'm with you there in the fight. But you know what? There are neighborhoods without grocery stores. There are people living in places that have already been condemned, and they live and awaken up in that place every morning when you're up in what you don't call a mansion, but it's $2 to $3 million on Abermale or Upper Northwest, North Porter Estates. Yeah. They're mansions. You don't look at it as that because you've gotten used to and acquainted with so much good in your life. You actually have benefited from white privilege and you don't even know it. You say, well, we didn't own slaves, but you're still benefiting from that today. So please keep your Black Lives Matter sign in front of your house and really think about what that means. Start looking into the deeper parts of Black Lives Matter in this country, as opposed to just placing that sign there. And don't fight against Black men who have had a tough, there is no person, not of color, that should have fought against my candidacy in the city. You cannot vote for me, but you cannot go out there and badmouth me when I'm a Black man that has done more in this country for Black civil rights than you will ever do with your Black Lives Matter sign up in your yard.
Well, I'm not.
That's why people.
Black Lives Matter.
Come on now.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I've talked to the president of the Los Angeles chapter, and I'm not impressed with them. I'm very upset with them. They got millions of dollars during this pandemic. I haven't seen a penny come in the Black community.
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. And the reality, but what it has allowed is white affluent people to take the name Black Lives Matter and act like it really matters. If it really matters, you're not going to go attacking Black candidates unless you know their real background and how they fought for civil rights. You have no right, as a white person in this country to start attacking hardworking Black people that have worked for Black rights and civil rights, and at the same time say Black Lives Matter. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. When you benefit off of current systems of racism that are in play right now, and yet you choose one of the safe Black people because you really feel uncomfortable with the Black person is speaking truth. That's what it is.
Yeah, we have a hard time with hearing our history in this country, and they want to be able to just erase it so that we can move forward. But we can't do that. It's too dangerous, again, because our children deserve the right to know their history so that we're never here again. The hour is winding down. And
all the lies an hour.
You said Black man can't buy a break in this city, can it? You're gonna be boycotting the
now I got a sister cheating me out of my 4 hours.
Hey, James Butler, hashtag reclaiming your time.
Hey,
don't make me go Maxine Waters.
You almost needed you too. Maybe you needed some of that in this race. I'm just saying. Hey, Mr. Butler, we really appreciate you. I do too. I love her too. But you know what? You touched on some things. You know, we have to make sure that we own our narrative. I was playing a little bit of, I don't like the word devil, but I was playing a little bit of an opposite advocate to see if I could challenge your conversation some so that it could be beneficial to our viewers and our listeners, right? There are so many people out here that have conversation, and in our town, boy, this is opinionated town. I know you know about all those scholars we got on the corner. I know you done ran into them.
DC is the most opinionated town in the country. Everyone
we know
can
everything and don't know nothing. We know everything but don't know nothing. I said it, and I'm from this town, Ward 8, verified, okay? But
DC and New Orleans. Y'all, and I'm not going to say this live because someone record me, and if I do get into future election, but let your imagination, DC and New Orleans, Lord. Lord have mercy.
But you know what? All jokes aside, November, we're looking at Republican candidates that is a Black woman. That wasn't by mistake, I'm sure, because surely we can get some people to vote if they just want to put a Black woman in, and we'll just stick a Black. I'm not saying she's not qualified, but it's really interesting to see the year of Kamala Harris, you know, the term of Kamala Harris go in the White House. Then we see Ketanji go into the Supreme Court. And now here we have this mayor who, you know, has already made history with her double term. And now here she goes again. And they got a Republican candidate. And I think the last numbers I saw was that the Republican registered vote in this city was somewhere hovering around between 28 and 30,000. I saw a number.
That's correct.
And so if that's the reality, we really know that Republican candidate, once the vote gets to 30,000, unless they planning an aggressive campaign to pull people across the aisle, you know, this is a Democratic state, no doubt. So on the horizon, are we looking at what you were facing in 2021? There's nobody else. She knocked all the men out in the primary. What are your, you know, you're allowed to suspect and guess and, you know, help us understand what you see happening.
I do see if there's some speculation that a Carl Racine may jump in the race, and that I think if a Carl Racine jumped in the race with the amount of progressives in DC and then the amount of people that voted against Bowser, Carl Racine could possibly beat her in the general. I honestly believe it would be the first time in DC history that a Democratic mayoral candidate got beat by a non-Democrat. And I'll say that, well, it happened with Anthony Williams with his writing, because technically he changed to another party because he had to.
Yeah, Mr.
But he's got high name recognition. He's a darling amongst the Republicans, one of my, or I should say, amongst the progressives. In fact, one of my best friends is an attorney general of a state out west, and Carl was very instrumental in getting him elected. And the reality is this: I think someone like him could topple Bowser. Whether Carl is willing to wade into the waters of politics. Now, keep in mind, I'm always hearing the backstories, the inside stories that most of you all probably never hear. So there is some slight baggage there that I think he's concerned about, and maybe perhaps that may have been the reason why he didn't run in the primary, actually. Rather, he puts that behind him and just puts it out there and runs. I think he could potentially beat Bowser. Do I have the fortitude to run as a write-in? I'm a tough man, and as one of my friends called me, my best friend called me, he says the other day, he says, man, if I were a gladiator and I saw you on the other side of the arena with me, he says, I wouldn't know whether I'm making it home alive. He says, you are one of the sturdiest people I know.
Yeah.
I said, I'm a fighter, but even I'm a rational man.
Yeah.
And, short of someone coming in like a Carl Racine to answer your question, or someone doing a write-in, even if Robert did a write-in, he might fare pretty well. I don't know. Write-in campaigns are hard to do. It's going to be an uphill battle, and she'd get the third term. Stacia Hall, I know her history and how she got to be the Republican nominee and who put her up there. Don't think she will do well at all. I don't even know that she'd get on 25 to 30,000 Republican votes. That's just my humble opinion in the Republican primary. And there's certainly not enough Democratic defectors that would even hold their nose and vote for a Republican, because that's such a bad name in DC, being a Republican. That takes
on a whole nother connotation. Yeah.
Right. So I think short of that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I thank you. So I'm going to ask you another tough question. So Bowser, you get that call, whoever jumps in the race, and they're shoring up their base, and you're offered a position in the cabinet. Do you take it? And if so, what are you going to help with?
Well, you assume that I haven't been offered a position.
I'm just asking. I don't know.
Had you been at my watch night party, you would have heard someone blurt something out. But let's just leave it there. We'll talk about this offline. I will say that.
Leave it to me to bring up a question that has to be answered offline. I'm gonna keep digging.
I will say this. I'm always willing to sit at the table to talk.
Okay.
If I can make this city better some way, somehow, and not sell people out, because I will never do that.
So you're not compromisable. That's good.
I will never, absolutely ever do that. And as a matter of fact, if it were the right position that I thought would help people, I would do it for not one single dime.
Be careful. We have some interesting people in this town. Be careful.
Honestly, but I've managed to keep myself, and I've really never worked for anyone my almost entire adult life. And not that I'm a rich man, but I have an okay, and I have all that I need, not all that I want. If I had all that I wanted, I'd probably be at some Ferrari dealership or something. I do have a wild streak for sports cars, so that'd probably be. And I am in my midlife, so it's probably be pricey.
I'll take you on a quarter-mile stretch. Come on. Roll.
So as we wind down,
Dr. Close, you behave yourself.
We keep her on the real tight, because she can go there. Now I'm just playing.
I love your spirit. I love your spirit, Dr. Close. Yeah.
Thank you.
To go out and do the work that we do in the populations that we do it in, you have to have a sense of humor. And I'm glad to see you smiling. It was very wonderful to bring you before our audience so that they can understand that,
You're just a fighter, and you're going to keep fighting because you do care about our city. And we thank you for caring. And we have a lot of folks that have migrated this way. And you've been in our Fairtown for how many years, Mr. Butler?
I think 21 years now.
Yeah, you figure anybody stay that long, you've been here long enough to know the landscape, right?
I was 4 when I came here, though.
Wow.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So you're fine. You're here. You good. You didn't let our dialect rub off, so that's a good thing.
I didn't say it. You said it.
I'm just saying some things you learn in this town. You let somebody else say it.
Can I say something? Can I say something real fast?
Yes, please.
Excuse me.
Mr. Butler, ask me again if you can say something. Ask me one more time. Come on. Ask me.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Can I?
Sure. Well. And that's because I love you, right? That's because I love you.
We are having way too much fun here. Way too much.
Look, you know what? We want the folks in DC to know that things are nowhere near the way we want them or would like them to be. But one thing about this town is you grow on us, right? And so don't give up on us. We need folks that have your passion and your commitment and your intellect, because you do bring something. You bring a lot to the table. And as you said, sometimes you just can't do anything about the geography. And I appreciate you talking on the reality of what you feel it is Black and white. It's really about the progressiveness and about the fact that we don't have a motivated population to go up against that. And they're really just making their way with the services and with everything else being made available. And they got the kind of candidate in there that's going to keep them safe, like you said. So we got one side of the city that doesn't feel safe and another side that does feel safe. And that's kind of how it sums things up. And I think, again, about with the Aaron Palmer performance, there has to be some opportunity for us to help that base of those folks understand the human side of the struggle on the other side of the city. And that's what I was trying to move to. If we can move it to a context where it's just a human conversation, right? Because I think that we give them a pass when we go Black because they can't challenge that, right? We know it and they know it. But they've had such a head start and so much help. We've got to start moving that conversation to a place where we can start engaging and holding people accountable on both sides for the human rights that we are leaving at the table.
Humanity.
Yeah. So I thank you, Mr. Butler. Before you get out of here, tell our fine folks what you're doing tomorrow, what you're doing next week, what you're doing next month.
Well, look, tomorrow I have to go to the Apple store again to get my phone and my AirPods looked at. At least it's a nice one. It's at the Carnegie Library, right downtown on 8th and K Street. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that again. I'm actually going to take myself out to lunch to Del Frisco's tomorrow because I deserve it.
Yes,
I deserve it.
Yes, you do. That's why I asked, what does a candidate who's done it 2 times, looking at it and looking at the landscape, what do you do tomorrow? So now you go to lunch, you get your iPod and your phone, you get back into your regular routine. What does that look like?
So, and I'm actually doing some cases before the EEOC now, and then the Office of Human Rights. So I'll be working on some of those. And I was working on some of them along the way. So I'm really going to get back to them in earnest right now. Then I am off to see my mother in Cleveland, Ohio on Thursday, and I'll be there from Tuesday. My mom is my heart for those that know me. And I was FaceTiming with her yesterday, and my mom makes me smile. And so I am looking forward to that and getting to see some family. She lives in a very tiny town that's a suburb of west of Cleveland. So it's quiet. It's so quiet at night. It's like spooky quiet. So I'm going to, and I get to sleep in my old bedroom. So I'm looking forward to that again. And it's a twin size bed that if you move, you'll fall out.
You're just going back home to be propped up and loved and hugged and reminded.
Trust me.
And they're going to send you back on out here so we can beat you up some more. Hey, James Butler.
That's what DC does.
You know
Trust
what you
me.
get. You know how we love here in this city. You know how it is.
Exactly.
It's a problem.
process.
Absolutely. The funny thing is, I'd rather be nowhere else in the world right now. This is my city. I love this city. I really, really love DC. I love the people of the district.
Yes.
I mean, I just really love the city, honestly.
And that's a wonderful place to leave it, is the love that many of us have for the city. And those that don't like politics need to remember that sometimes it's just about being able to show that emotion on a level that you're willing to fight or sacrifice for something greater than yourself, because you understand the need is important, right? Yep. And so we thank you again for fighting for our fair DC. We hope that you will stay at the table and keep an eye on things. I like the fact that you're willing to stay open and maybe help if in fact there's a way that you could to be able to change things for the city, because that's really all this is about. And that's all, any reason anybody would run and put their record on the line and have to have those microscopes stuck up your tail. You have to care about this.
Trust me. Yes. I'm like,
you have to care.
Lord, y'all peeling back everything. Peel it back.
Well, I tell you what, you're a good old vet now. You about ready for that seat now. So you just stick around and keep doing what you're doing. How do the people that are following your message, that are following you and that have been enlightened by you and that you've picked up in this race, how do they stay in touch with you? Where do they reach out to you?
Oh, thank you all. You all can email me at james@butler4dc.com. That's James, the @ Butler, BUTLER, 4dc.com. Those of you that will want to reach out to me via telephonic means can call me directly at 202-677-3131. Again, that's 202-677-3131. You can also email me at another email, and that's jqbutler1@hotmail.com.
That's awesome. And give us that campaign slogan one more time.
What slogan are you looking for? People
the campaign you just ran. Give us something to go out on.
What?
Did you forget it?
He said,
you done already moved past that. You on a plane to Cleveland. You already in your car heading to see mama. You ain't thought about the campaign. That one didn't work, so you already put it away, right?
Okay.
I love you folks. People, Butler 4DC, putting people first.
Okay. Good say. Wait, that's right. Hey, Mr. Butler, don't change that saying, don't change that slogan. Just stay patient for us, because we're a town. Last time I checked, we're a town that still needs strong leadership. And we're going to figure this thing out, and we're going to keep doing the work on the community level. Thanks for all your support on Woodbury. We're still fighting. There's still much work to be done. Please check in with us when you get back from your moms.
Thank you. I promise I will. Love you, ladies.
Love you more.
So much for
Thank you so
me.
much for doing this. And can I get it one time? Palms up.
Palms up.
Hey, James Butler. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you all.
All right.
You too, man.
Safe travel.